Anthem. Privacy is an inherent human right and a requirement for maintaining the human condition with dignity and respect. Bruce Schneider. Let's look at some pretest questions. Question 1. What is a primary tool you use to identify the financial significance of a mitigation tool? The Ishikawa diagram, the fishbone diagram, CBA, cost-benefit analysis, POAM, plan of action, and milestones. Question 2. You present management with recommendations from a risk management plan. What can management choose to do? Accept or reject the recommendations, adjust, defer, or modify the recommendations, accept, defer, or modify the recommendations, allow or deny the recommendations. Question 3. A POAM is used to track the progress of a project. What type of chart is commonly used to assist with tracking? A fishbone chart, cause and effect chart, Gantt chart, or POAM, plan of action and milestones chart. Anthem, the nation's second largest health insurer, including brands such as Blue Cross and Blue Shield, Amerigroup, CareMore, Unicare, HealthLink, and DCare, reported that hackers had broken into its servers and stolen Social Security numbers and other personal data. Anthem said that the company was a target of a very sophisticated external cyber attack. Customer names, dates of birth, Social Security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, email addresses, and employment information were exposed. What started out as a phishing email ended in disaster. In 2015, a user at an Anthem subsidiary downloaded an attachment from a spam email. Almost 80 million people had their personal information stolen.
One of America's largest health insurers, Anthem, this morning confirmed a massive data breach. Reports say hackers may have stolen up to 80 million records. No credit card or medical information is in danger, but Social Security numbers, birthdays, and addresses may have been compromised.
Anthem's president and employees are among those who may be affected by the cyber attack. It's still not clear if the hack has been contained. CBS News business analyst Jill Schlesinger is here to look at the impact of what could be one of the largest hacks in history. Jill, good morning.
Good morning.
How bad is this security breach?
Well, this is pretty big. This will rank potentially in the top 3. We had two breaches at Experian and eBay in 2013, but this looks bigger than the JP Morgan, the Target, the Home Depot. Again, I just really want to emphasize, so far it does not look like credit card or bank information was stolen. We are worried that we have our names and Social Securities, but really that data seems to be okay, and medical information does not appear to have been stolen. So I think that's really important to remember.
So the worst thing is?
Well, I think the worst thing is not knowing and the broad number of people. I think the best thing is the company found it themselves last week. They disclosed it within 1 week. There have been instances where have been weeks and weeks have passed before they disclose it to the public. So I think Anthem is really on the cusp of something new here. Companies saying, we've got to get in front of this. We can't afford to let weeks go by.
So anything customers can do right now to protect themselves?
Well, first of all, Anthem has set up a separate website, so anthemfacts.com, a toll-free number. And I would encourage everyone who thinks there's been any sort of hack of your own information. The FTC has a phenomenal website, ftc.gov, with very specific steps that you should take if you think your information has been compromised. Again, ftc.gov.
It's scary. I mean, this is scary that another instance of a cyber attack.
And I think it's what we have to be used to. And this is going to be the cost of doing business for every single company and nonprofit in this country. There's going to have to be more money spent on cybersecurity. We are seeing national regulators saying they are going to have task force on this. Very important.
And even Anthem's president has admitted he was hacked, too.
Yeah, misery loves company, right?
Yeah, scary stuff. Thank you, Jill.
Thanks.
According to Bloomberg News, China may be responsible for this data breach. A team of investigators led by 7 state insurance commissioners across the country were tasked with conducting an examination of the breach. Information security firm Mendiant was also hired by Anthem to conduct its own internal investigation into the cyber attack. A foreign government was likely behind the attack. 2 foreign nationals were indicted in the attack but remain at large. 2 lawsuits ensued. The government sued Anthem for allowing the breach. Anthem paid $16 million to the federal government as a penalty for Anthem's data breach. There was a class action lawsuit brought on behalf of customers whose identities were stolen and resulted in losses. This resulted in another $115 million payout.
New tonight, a massive hacking of personal information from indie-based Anthem is being blamed on a Chinese group. Back in 2015, we spent days here at RTV6 warning you about the Anthem data breach impacting 78 million people. Today, the government unsealed an indictment in Indianapolis, charging several Chinese nationals for hacking into Anthem. The group allegedly used the stolen information to send emails to people. The emails contained malware, which allegedly allowed the group to gain access into those customers' computers. The government says all the data stolen from Anthem was sent to China.
Phishing attacks attempt to get users to give up information or perform an action they wouldn't normally do. Some phishing emails include links to malicious websites. If users click on the link, they can inadvertently install malware on their systems. More sophisticated phishing attempts target specific companies and fool the users.
Most of us have been obsessively looking for any new information on COVID-19 anywhere we can find it, and hackers are capitalizing on that. There is a flood of emails and websites promising vital information on the virus when, in fact, most are just phishing emails designed to steal personal information and money. Here to walk us through how to avoid those phishing scams is senior technology writer at Consumer Reports, Bree Fowler. Bree, thanks for being with us. And yes, the end goal for many of these cyber criminals is your personal information and your money, but also something even bigger at times.
Right. I mean, a lot of people are working at home, and if they can get into a corporate network with everyone's information, that's even better for them.
All right. You've got 5 tips to help us avoid these phishing scams. The first one is think before you click.
Right. Just stop and take a breath. These scams work best when people are worried, when they're freaking out, when they're clicking on things that they shouldn't. If something seems weird, don't click on it, don't open it, just delete it.
And then you say examine the link. How do you do that?
Right. I mean, this goes for addresses where email is coming from as well. I mean, if it's not coming from the CDC, if it's cdc.ru or .com, just be careful about things like that.
Yeah, your third one is a very big one. Do not open the attachment or links.
This goes for any kind of email, not just coronavirus type stuff, but you never should open attachments from people you do not know. It could be spyware that's going to get downloaded onto your computer or ransomware that could just lock it all completely down.
You also say to turn on auto update and security tools. How do you do that and why?
Well, on computers and on your phones, and this goes for things like routers and apps as well. Software makers, hardware makers are constantly updating their stuff to protect us from things like this. And you can't be protected if you don't have the latest update.
Also, you say pick up the phone.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these scams, they may be from the CDC or the WHO, but they also could be from Bob in accounting or Joe in IT. You know, they may want to reset your credentials or say you have a virus. Call Bob in accounting, call Joe in IT.
All right, so beware. These are trying times for everyone. All right, yes. Bree Fowler, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Let's look at how to manage the risk of such an attack happening. A risk management plan is a specialized type of project management. You apply many of the same techniques to risk management that you would when managing any project. At the core of this is the need to plan. As the old saying goes, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. Without a risk management plan, failure is much more likely than success. A well-documented risk management plan helps ensure that you're able to reach your desired goal. Primarily, you create a risk management plan to mitigate risks such as a phishing attack. This plan helps you identify the risks and choose the best solutions. It also helps you to track the solutions to ensure they're implemented on budget and on schedule. A fully implemented plan will include a plan of attack and milestones, POAM. You can then use the POAM to track the project. One of the most important first steps for a risk management plan is to establish the objectives. The objectives become the roadmap for your plan. They help you to identify where you're going, and just as important, they help you know when you've arrived. You should establish objectives for the plan as early as possible. The objectives identify the goals of the project. These objectives outline what you should include in the plan. Some common objectives for a risk management plan are: identify threats. These could be both internal and external threats. Identify vulnerabilities. These are weaknesses. They might include lack of policies preventing the information sharing, lack of protection when the data is stored, lack of protection when the data is transmitted. Assign responsibilities. Assign responsibilities to specific departments to identify threats and vulnerabilities. You will use this data to identify corrective actions. Later, you can assign responsibilities to departments to implement and track the plan. Identify the costs of noncompliance. Costs include the legal fines associated with noncompliance. Additional costs may result from lawsuits or the loss of customer confidence. Provide recommendations. Create a list of recommendations. This list might include procedural changes. It could include protecting the data with access controls. It could also include encrypting the data during transmissions. Identify the cost of recommendations. Identify and list the cost of each recommendation. Provide a CBA, cost-benefit analysis. Complete a CBA for each recommendation. It will compare the cost of the recommendation against the cost of the compromise of data. Document accepted recommendations. Management will choose which recommendations to implement. Managers can accept, defer, or modify recommendations. These choices will be documented in the plan. Track implementation. The plan will track the choices in their implementation. And create a POAM. Include a POAM that assigns responsibilities. Management will use it to track and follow up on the project. Once top managers receive a plan, they will be able to make decisions based on the data. They will accept some recommendations, they may modify some, and they may defer some. In addition to the objectives, it is also important to identify the scope of a risk management plan. The scope identifies the boundaries of the plan. The boundaries could include the entire organization or a single system. Without defined boundaries, the plan can get out of control. A common problem with many projects is scope creep. Scope creep comes from uncontrolled changes. As the changes creep in, the scope of the project grows. Changes bring in additional requirements. Uncontrolled changes result in cost overruns and missed deadlines. Consider an example of HIPAA data. The purpose of the risk management plan is to ensure compliance with HIPAA. The scope of the plan might include identification of all health data, storage of health data, usage of health data, and transmission of health data. The stakeholders of the project include the CIO, Chief Information Officer, the Human Resources Department Head, and written approval is required for any activities outside this scope. The project manager assigns responsibilities in the project. Team members may not work directly for the project manager. Technicians might work for the IT department. They can be assigned as team members for a project. However, they may still work directly in the IT department. So their taskings from the IT department and from the project manager may compete with each other. If the project manager doesn't have authority to resolve these problems, it can affect the success of the project. At the very least, the project manager should have access to stakeholders to resolve problems. The project manager is responsible for the overall success of the plan. Some of the common tasks of a project manager are ensuring costs are controlled, ensuring quality is maintained, make sure the project stays on schedule and stays within scope, tracking and managing all project issues, ensuring information is available to the stakeholders, raising issues and problems as they become known, ensuring that others are aware of their responsibilities and deadlines. Individuals could be assigned for the following activities: risk identification. This includes identifying threats and vulnerabilities. The resulting list of potential risks can be extensive. Risk assessment. This means identifying the likelihood and impact of each risk. A threat matrix is a common method used to assess risks. Consider our HIPAA example. An HR department might be responsible for providing a list of all health information sources. Inspection results for all data sources regarding HIPAA compliance. How is the data stored, protected, and transmitted? A list of existing and needed HIPAA policies. A list of recommended solutions to ensure HIPAA compliance. Costs for each of the recommended solutions. Costs associated with non-compliance. The IT department is responsible for providing identification of access controls used for data. A list of recommended solutions to ensure compliance with HIPAA. Costs for each of the recommended solutions. The CFO, the Chief Financial Officer, will validate the data provided by the IT and sales departments and complete a CBA, a cost-benefit analysis. While it might be easier to assign responsibility, it's more challenging to identify the tasks. One of the challenges is to generate lists of realistic threats, vulnerabilities, and recommendations. An affinity diagram can help with these tasks. An affinity diagram is created in 4 basic steps. First, identify the problem. Create a basic problem statement. For example, perhaps there's a website issue. Website outages result in lost sales. Second, generate ideas. The more the better. The ideas can be about any elements of the problem. They can include threats and vulnerabilities. They can also include the recommended solutions. Brainstorming is a great method. In a brainstorming sessions, participants are encouraged to mention anything that comes to their mind. All ideas are written down without any judgment. The creative process can often bring out a wealth of ideas. Gather ideas into groups. After the ideas are generated, group them together for a risk management plan. The groups will usually fit into categories of threats, vulnerabilities, and recommendations. Some of these categories might include subcategories. For example, you could divide vulnerabilities into network and server weaknesses. Then fourth, create an affinity diagram. There's an example. It groups all of the ideas together. In an actual scenario, the affinity diagram is likely to be much larger. You could divide threats into external and internal threats. These can be an almost endless list of vulnerabilities. You might create this part of the risk management plan after the project has started. You develop procedures and schedules. You include a recommended solution for any threat or vulnerability with the goal of mitigating the associated risk. While you can summarize a solution in a short phrase, the solution itself will often include multiple steps. This is an example of a procedure. HIPAA compliance, procedures for mitigating the risk of HIPAA noncompliance. Recommendation, increase awareness of HIPAA. Justification, make clear that noncompliance can result in fines. Procedures, use the following steps to increase awareness. Require all employees to read and comply with HIPAA. Provide training to all employees on HIPAA. The cost-benefit analysis, CBA, is a process used to determine how to manage a risk. If the benefits of a control outweigh the costs, the control can be implemented to reduce the risk. If the costs are greater than the benefits, the risk can be accepted. In this context, the CBA should include 2 items. First, the cost of the recommendation. The recommendation is the control intended to manage the risk. If you anticipate that there will be ongoing costs, you should include them in the calculation. Second, projected benefits. Calculate the benefit in terms of dollars. Benefits can be expressed as money earned or losses reduced. After collecting data on the risks and recommendations, you need to include it in a report. You will then present this report to management. The primary purpose of the report is to allow management to decide on what recommendations to use. There are 4 major categories of reporting the requirements. They are: 1. Present recommendations. These are the risk response recommendations. 2. Document management response to recommendations. Management can accept, modify, or defer any of the recommendations. 3. Document and track implementation of accepted recommendations. This becomes the actual risk response plan. And 4. Create a plan of action and milestones, POAM. The POAM tracks the risk response actions. Let's look at the POAM a little closer. This is the document used to track progress. They are used in many types of project management, and a POAM is used to assign responsibility and to allow management follow-up. The POAM makes it clear for who is responsible for each task. When a task is not complete on schedule, it also makes clear whom to hold responsible. Project managers and upper-level management can use the POAM to follow up on a project. The POAM allows managers to quickly determine the status of any project. When project management tools are used, the source of the problem is often easy to identify. POAMs are also useful for any audited projects. Let's consider HIPAA. HIPAA requires regular reviews. The POAM can show the progress the company has made to become compliant. If a company is not 100% compliant, but shows it's made significant progress, fines could be waived or reduced. If a company doesn't have any documentation indicating progress, maximum fines could be assessed. There are no specific formats required for a POAM. One company might use a POAM in a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet with 15 columns for every item. Another company might create a POAM in a Microsoft Word document. The POAM is a living document. It is not a report that is created once and is complete. Instead, you should update the POAM throughout the life cycle of a project. Additionally, the POAM may look different depending upon the phase of the project. Early in the project, the POAM might be generic. Later in the project, it could become more specific. The cause and effect diagram is also known as the Ishikawa diagram or a fishbone diagram. It is used to link problems with causes.
A common challenge for improvement teams is identifying what changes you can test to improve a process or problem. One great method to help you break down ideas is a tool known as a cause and effect diagram. You may have also heard of this tool referred to as an Ishikawa diagram, attributed to its creator, Kuru Ishikawa, or a fishbone diagram because of the resemblance to the bones of a fish. To create a cause and effect diagram, write the effect in a box on the right-hand side of the page. So let's imagine we're working on improving hand washing. All right. Then draw a horizontal line across the page. Decide on a few categories or causes for the problem. Useful categories of causes in a classic fishbone diagram include people, methods, materials, equipment, and environment. Then we can draw a diagonal line to each of these, and these are actually the bones of the fish, and hence its name. The process of categorizing potential causes may be very useful to help you to break down a complex problem and focus in on it from various perspectives. So as you're looking at each of the categories, you want to generate a list of causes. In this example, people might include clinical staff, right? It also might include non-clinical staff. I'll just put them as just other staff. It might include the methods. How do you actually wash your hands? So I'll say wash process. It could be the materials. Are you using the right kind of soap, or is it dry out your hands? So we'll think about the soap. Could be the equipment, like the dispenser. Is it an easy dispenser to use? Does it give you the right amount? Or maybe it's the environment. Where is the dispenser location? Is it near the process of care? Identify the causes by asking why with people that are closest to the process until you've reached a useful level of detail. That is when the cause is specific enough to be able to test a change and to measure its effects. Sometimes I like to describe this for folks that have children as the 5-year-old method. If you ever had a kid, they ask you why 5 times constantly until they get to the root of the problem. And you're doing the same thing here.
A milestone plan chart is a simple graphical representation of major milestones. It shows the major milestones laid out in graphical format. If there are any dependencies between the milestones, this chart will show them. In other words, if milestone 2 can't begin until milestone 1 has been completed, this chart will show that dependency. A Gantt chart shows a project schedule. Gantt charts are commonly used in project management. The primary difference between a milestone plan chart and the Gantt chart is that the Gantt chart shows more detail.
In this video, I'm going to show you how to create a basic project timeline or Gantt chart in Microsoft Project 2016. Gantt charts are a great way to get a bird's eye view of your entire project. At the end of this video, I'll also show you an alternative that might be a little bit easier, but first, here's how to do it in Project 2016. If this video helps you out, we'd love it if you hit that thumbs up button. To build our project timeline, we first need to have our list of tasks. It's best to list out your tasks in the order they need to be done so your project stays organized and easy to read. I've already opened a blank project and added the first few tasks for my project. I'll add a few more so you can see the process. Just click in the task name field and type in the name of the task. If you have tasks that are related to each other, it might be a good idea to group them together as subtasks. To do that, just highlight the task rows that are related and click the right indent button in the ribbon. This will make the highlighted tasks subtasks of the item directly above the highlighted rows in the task list. I'll do that one more time. You don't have to use subtasks, but they can be helpful on larger projects since they allow you to collapse sections of your project down to save some screen real estate. Now that we have all of our tasks entered into the list and organized as subtasks, it's time to give them start and end dates so we can start building the actual project schedule. Click in the Start Date field and use the date picker to select the start date for the task. You could also manually enter the date into the field. Now click in the End Date field and use the date picker or manually enter the end date for the task. If you prefer, you could just enter a duration into the duration field and Project will automatically calculate the end date for you. Now that all of our tasks have start and end dates, it's a good time to add some milestones to the project. Milestones are a great way to make sure your project is running on time as well as signal the end of specific phases of your project. There are a couple ways to add milestones to your project. The first is to just enter a duration of 0 days for a task that is already in the list. Project will automatically convert that task into a milestone. The other way is to insert a row where you want the milestone to be and click on the milestone button in the ribbon. Okay, our project is looking good so far, only a couple steps left. Since milestones are usually used to mark the end of a phase of the project, it's a good idea to link appropriate tasks to those milestones. To do that, highlight the tasks that should be linked to the milestone and click the Link button in the ribbon. Now you have a basic project that includes all of your tasks. If you're enjoying this video, it would really help us out if you went ahead and hit that thumbs up button. And while you're doing that, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss
This demonstrates the critical path chart. Some tasks within a project can be delayed without impacting the project finish date. Other tasks must be completed on time. A critical path chart shows a list of project tasks that must be completed on time. If any task in the path is delayed, the overall project will be delayed. A risk management plan is a specific type of project plan. The project is to identify and mitigate risks. You start by creating objectives and a project scope. Then you identify risks. Finally, you create a response plan as recommendations to mitigate risks. Management can then choose to accept, defer, or modify the risks. You then implement the recommendations. A primary tool used to track the recommendations is a Plan of Action and Milestones, POAM. This POAM is a living document that is updated throughout the project. You can supplement it with different charting tools to ease project management tasks. Let's review the questions. Question 1. What is the primary tool used to identify the financial significance of a mitigation tool? The answer is C, CBA, cost-benefit analysis. Question 2. You present management with recommendations from a risk management plan. What can management choose to do? The answer is C, accept, defer, or modify the recommendations. Question 3. A POAM is used to track the progress of a project. What type of chart is commonly used to assist with tracking? The answer is C, Gantt chart.